Hello, my name is Chanel Bartley and my presentation is about adaptive teaching in design and technology, focusing on 2 Year 7 pupils with ADHD. I'll discuss their learning needs, the research that informed my strategies, the adaptations I used and the impact these had on their progress. For this assignment, I have focused on adaptive teaching for SEND, specifically 2 Year 7 pupils with ADHD. I chose these pupils because they have similar needs linked to attention, executive functioning, working memory and self-regulation. However, they do not present in exactly the same way, which made this a useful case study for exploring how adaptive teaching needs to be targeted rather than generic. The aim of my presentation is to explore how adaptive teaching strategies supported these pupils access confidence, independence and progress. The two strategies I focused on were chunking and modelling and visual scaffolds with regular check-ins. These strategies were chosen because both pupils experience barriers when tasks involve several steps, written explanation, transitions between activities and independent organisation. In DT, this is particularly important because pupils need to move between listening, designing, writing, making and using tools safely. ADHD is particularly relevant in D&T because DT lessons place high demands on executive functioning. Pupils are expected to listen to instructions, remember sequences, follow safety routines, move between written and practical tasks, and use tools and equipment safely. For pupils with ADHD, this can create barriers linked to sustained attention, working memory, organisation, emotional regulation, and independence. These barriers do not mean that the pupils lack creativity or practical ability. Instead, they may need the task to be structured in a way that reduces unnecessary cognitive load and supports them to access the learning. This was clear in my case study. Both pupils were capable in DT and achieved highly in the practical assessment, but they needed support with different aspects of the learning process, such as confidence, written organisation, check-ins, visual examples, and managing transitions. Student A has a wider profile of need, including ADHD, ASD, dyslexia, and dyscalculia. She is hardworking, creative, and responds well to praise. Her main barriers in DT are working memory, written organisation, processing information, confidence, and transitions between tasks. She often starts independently, but can lose confidence as the task progresses, so visual examples, short instructions, check-ins, and encouragement are important. Student B has ADHD, primarily inattentive, alongside traits of dyslexia. She starts tasks quickly and produces strong visual work, but may sit quietly when unsure, so needs are less obvious. Her main barriers are time awareness, practical anxiety, masking, and reliance on examples. She benefits from visual examples, written instructions, safety reassurance, and regular check-ins. Literature helped me understand ADHD as linked to executive functioning rather than simply behaviour. Barkley and Brown both connect ADHD to planning, inhibition, working memory, and self-regulation. This matters in DT because pupils need to remember processes, follow safety routines, and manage practical tasks. The EEF also recommends scaffolding, explicit instruction, and metacognitive approaches for pupils with SEND. This informed my choice of two strategies, chunking and modelling, and visual scaffolds with check-ins. My first strategy was chunking and modelling. This meant breaking instructions into small steps, modelling the process clearly, and building stop and check-in points. This links to cognitive load theory because pupils can become overloaded when they are given too much information at once. In DT, this is especially important because practical tasks involve safety, sequencing, and accuracy. From the Desk Tidy project onwards, I became more deliberate with chunking and modelling. For student A, this helped reduce overwhelm because she often starts independently but loses confidence as the task progresses. For student B, modelling and check-ins helped because she starts quickly but may sit quietly when unsure. This showed me that the same strategy supported both pupils but for different reasons. My second strategy was visual scaffolds and check-ins. This included visual checklists, written instructions, exemplar work, sentence starters, and model answers. This links to scaffolding because support is used to help pupils access the task, but should be gradually reduced over time. I chose this strategy because both pupils have barriers linked to working memory, attention, and processing, so relying only on verbal instructions was not enough. This slide shows the impact of the scaffolds in the product analysis task. Student A used the model answer and visual support to engage with the written task, but still needed reassurance and support with organisation. Student B's work was clearly presented and organised, but she relied heavily on the model answer. This showed both the strength and limitation of scaffolding. It supported access, but also created a risk of over-reliance. My next step would be to gradually reduce the scaffold, moving from full examples to sentence starters, then keywords, then success criteria only. This assessment evidence gave me a useful comparison between practical and written outcomes. In the practical assessment, student A achieved 20 out of 20 and student B achieved 19 out of 20, compared with a class average of 15. This suggests that practical work was a clear strength for both pupils. Their formative written assessment showed a different picture. Student A achieved 24 out of 45, which is 53.33%, and student B achieved 28 out of 45, which is approximately 62%. This suggests that written and theory-based assessment created more barriers than practical work. Both pupils also produced strong 3D concepts and realistic drawings in the school equipment store task, although creativity was more limited. This suggests that visual and spatial understanding were strengths, while written explanation, originality, and independent regulation still needed support. Overall, this supports my argument that their barriers were not linked to the lack of DT ability. Instead, the barriers were more visible in written organisation, working memory, confidence, independence, and regulation. This reinforces that adaptive teaching should reduce barriers without lowering expectations. Overall, the strategies had a positive impact, but not in the same way for both pupils. Chunking and modelling helped reduce the demands on working memory and supported pupils to understand the task in smaller, more manageable steps. Visual scaffolds and check-ins also supported the access, confidence, and independence. For student A, the strategies were particularly useful for reducing overwhelm and building confidence, especially during written tasks and transitions between activities. The practical assessment showed that student A could work independently and achieve highly when the task was practical, structured, and clearly modelled. For student B, visual examples and structured worksheets supported task access and helped her produce high-quality visual outcomes. However, regular check-ins were important because she may sit quietly when unsure. A key limitation was that student B relied heavily on exemplar work, which suggests that scaffolds need to be gradually reduced as she can develop more independent design thinking. The practical assessment evidence was significant because both pupils performed above the class average. This shows that their barriers were not linked to the lack of ability in design and technology. Instead, their barriers were more connected to attention, working memory, confidence, written organisation, and independence. This case study has shown me that adaptive teaching cannot be generic even when pupils share a diagnosis of ADHD. The same strategies can support pupils in different ways. Therefore, adaptive teaching should reduce barriers to learning while maintaining high expectations. Overall, this case study has shown me that adaptive teaching is not about lowering expectations, it is about reducing barriers so pupils can access the learning, build confidence, and demonstrate what they are capable of.